Hello, and how good is it to have a pretty much complete list of team lists for us to go through and to talk about? My name's Nikki. I'm going to run through some of the questions on YouTube since TLT has come out and give some of my opinion on some of the real burning topics that have come out of this. And provided I don't ramble on too long, we might also get a look at my team at the end as well, so everyone can have a good laugh at that. For those who watched the previous videos, there may have been some issues with some background noise. Those annoying birds have been banished to the far corner of the house, so hopefully that won't be much of a problem this time. But with the accent, unfortunately, I can't do much about that. So hearing me might be clearer, but understanding me, results may vary. One thing I do want to say, I think I mentioned in the last video as well, but I'll say here again that for a lot of these questions, a lot of them come out as should I get player A or player B? And for a lot of those, while I love giving my opinions on players and I might have my own preference for certain players, I'm not necessarily going to tell you which one to get. I don't think that's kind of why I'm here or the purpose of these videos. We want to help people make these decisions, give you all of the information possible and make those decisions for yourself. If something comes up like, do I pick Jacob Preston or Angus Crichton? That's just a vibe check for me, right? They're both great. They'll both do great. They'll both score a lot of fantasy points. There's a few questions around them. Minutes on Preston's side, does he play 80? Questions on Crichton's side, are the Roosters good at all this year? Are they going to fall off? Is that going to hurt his scoring? Does the fact that they've lost a lot of stars mean that more will go through him? It could help him in his scoring that way. So in a lot of these instances, we can talk about the players, talk about my thoughts, but ultimately we want to make the decision on who to pick up to you. So that's kind of the way I'm approaching it. Let me know in the comments, etc., if you think that makes sense and if we're doing that, if it's working or not. And we can kind of adjust as we go. Bit of a learning curve here as these videos are a kind of new feature. So yeah, as we go through, we'll work it out. So let's get into it. A few gem comments come from Longy's Live now here. Tuesdays are great, aren't they? Whole ton of content to talk about fantasy. Dolphin South game, yep, definitely. That would have been carnage if we had another game off. I don't know how that would have worked at all. Where we get questions. So Watson, this was always going to come up. Love more deep than watching. Is he worth selling now? Don't know how the minutes are going to play out with him. So my thoughts on Watson haven't really changed, to be honest, since the beginning of the preseason. I may have been seeing monsters under the bed for a while, but I just never. I've always had questions on whether or not he was going to be an 80-minute hooker because he just never has been. He's played 80 minutes a hooker. He's played 80, started games at hooker and then moved to the middle and played 80 minutes then. But there's never been a time where he's been the full-time 80-minute hooker. And when you compare him to, so when I think about Watson, I can't do that without comparing him to Harry Grant because in my head, that's always been the decision. Do you take you have Mamazelis and then you have Grant or Watson, or both. I've seen people with both. That could also be a play. But for me, it was always that toss up. So I was always comparing the two. And the thing about Grant was, you know what you're going to get out of him. He's going to give you 80 minutes at hooker week in, week out, with maybe the odd rest. So even last year, down year for him. Let's see, Harry Grant. So down year for him in terms of scoring, but still he was on the park. So he averaged 76 minutes a game. That includes a 58-minute game over Origin. Fine, brilliant, love it. With Watson, we can see that he's played hooker quite a bit, although not a lot since 2019. And the further back we look at these, the less stock I kind of put them in. But last year, 73 minutes a hooker, 80 minutes, 80 minutes, 70 minutes, perfect. But again, these are like individual games. This isn't you're our hooker for the foreseeable future. We're going to bash you out 80 minutes. So while I always thought it was a possibility, and obviously the possibility of that he would play, say, 60 minutes of hooker and then move into the middle rotation, all of that stuff that, everybody's kind of talked about. There was always options. I always had in the back of my head, well, what if they just don't, like what if they don't need him in that middle rotation? We've talked a lot about the Roosters pack. There's a ton of guys washing through there. We're not sure who's going to get what minutes in what position. Um, but you look at especially when Lenu comes back, do they need him to chip in 20 minutes in the lock position? I mean, I don't really think so. So are they likely to just say, instead of being 60 minutes a hooker, 20 minutes in the middle, they just go, well, yeah, 60 minutes a hooker, have a seat, have a rest for 20 minutes. So that had always been in my head. And I'm on record somewhere at some point saying that Grant was always ahead for me for Watson, the only difference being that extra 70,000, which at the time my team really needed that. Having that extra 70k added a lot of additional flexibility, etc. And I had Watson purely for that reason, without being completely convinced about it. Now I've rejigged my team. The reason for that, I think, is because I had Latrell up top. I had Yo clearly Latrell. I had a lot of money in guns. And since I've gone cheaper and went fullback, I had a ton of money that I didn't know what to do with. So I've ended up going Watson to Grant. If you think that Watson needs 80 minutes to be a good pick, then yeah, maybe you can be a little bit cautious now, because I'm just not sure that 80 minutes. I'm not sure that 80 minutes has been there as a consistent week in, week out guarantee for him. If you think that 65 minutes is still worth it, and then those additional upside minutes, if he does move to the middle, if he does, stay on the park in some way, that's just bonus, then stick on Watson. So I still have them as the 1 and 2 hookers. Watson has the mid dual, which is obviously very useful still to begin with. So yeah, that's kind of my take. I am on Grant ahead of Watson, but it's less to do with the team news. I just never really thought he would be a straight 80-minute hooker regardless. And seeing Moriarty there and the way the bench is made up hasn't really changed my opinion on it all that much. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Hey Jamie, which do you better have, Garrick and Hover, Wally and Jazz? So this is the type of question I'm talking about in terms of you're probably not going to be able to give you a real straight answer here. To me, they're very different picks, right? You've got a kind of safe, high floor, low ceiling type of guys. The way I see Garrick, like he's a 48 average guy at center, priced at 43, a few points of value, but I don't think he's going to hit the heights of some of the other centers that are out there. And the basement price Hubner, we're not quite sure what we're going to get out of him either. Wayne Bennett seems to like him, but his scoring last year at the Dolphins wasn't the most promising. But look, you can't go wrong with a 50-minute middle if that's what he's going to get for basement price, right? Wally and Jazz, they're that mid range that I just like to avoid. Jazz Tavanga is a particular player. He seems to come up every year. He'll have some big moments. He's a PPM monster in most cases. He's always been there, and he'll have a game where he plays big minutes, and then we all get excited. It's like, oh, if he gets 50 plus minutes at his price, that's amazing. But then it just doesn't happen consistently. You can see here again, just looking at last year, 41 and 34 minutes, great PPM. It's 34 minutes, 23 minutes, 32 minutes, 9 minutes with an injury. So discount that. 25 minutes, 42, 46, back into the good scores over 50, 37. Then he's 28 minutes, 33, 30. So I don't know. I just can't, unless we see a set role where he plays 40 plus minutes, I don't think I can get on board. But again, if you think that the Manly setup is locked in, he's going to start at 9 and he'll play 20 odd minutes, and then Simpkin will come on and Jazz will go into the middle for 20 odd minutes. Could absolutely pay off. I'm just not convinced. And then you've got the questions of Croker coming back in a few weeks. What does that happen? What does that mean then? What happens to the rotation at that point? So yeah, it's like he's cheap. He has a great PPM. Are the minutes there? I'm not sure. So yeah, that's that. Moali, yeah, again, he's there's talent. There's obvious talent there. There's upside there. How much? How many minutes? I know Jamie's been quite high on him. I think he's higher on him than I am. For him, he's a kind of wait and see for me. Safe Arthur Gilbert again. These are the type of questions. I've looked up a lot of these players. I'm sure you've seen footy statistics. You've used footy statistics. If you haven't, this is where a lot of this information will come from. So when you hear people talking about he averages X in X minutes, almost assuredly, this is where they're getting the information from. And it is really easy to look up the guys that you want to investigate. So, I mean, this is what I would do, say, for Seyfarth and Gilbert. Seyfarth, let's look at him on the edge. Let's say over 70 minutes, because that's kind of what we're hoping for. Average of 54. Looks pretty good. Tom Gilbert, let's have a look at him at lock. Let's just say over 40 minutes. Have a look. Average of 47. So, they're relatively small sample sizes here. So there's limited amount that you can read into limited sample sizes. But to me, just looking at this without digging into much further, Seyfarth has the higher upside in my eyes. Tom Gilbert, I think, is a safer pick, and a lot of these choices come down to this. So I'll probably repeat myself quite a lot. Sometimes it's a choice between a safe pick and a risky pick. So Tom Gilbert, I don't think he'll be a bad pick. He's locked into that role. He's been named captain. I don't think that affects his minutes too much. Certainly at the start of the year, as he gets, he had a big injury last year. He'll be getting wound up to go deep into the year. So I'm not expecting huge minutes early, but he's going to be there week in, week out if he's fit. Seyfarth, we think he's going to be there, but he's played. I did look it up before. Something like 12. He's been in the league 5 years and he started 12 games and come off the bench 60 or 70 times in that time frame. He's just never been a full-time starter. He's done well when he has, but he's never been full-time. So if you have doubts over whether or not he keeps that spot, maybe you go Gilbert because it's safer. But to me, I think that upside is bigger on Seyfarth, certainly to start the season. And again, if Gilbert does build up those minutes, he's somebody that maybe you can look at later on for me. So I have Seyfarth, I don't have Gilbert. That's my take. Let's close these ones, try not to get confused. Who do you think drops out of the centres of the Roosters? I mean, if we knew that, it would make everybody's life easier. I don't know. I'm still not 100% convinced Billy Smith comes back in straight away anyway. Like, I know that's always been the chat, but he's had no preseason. He's had so many injury problems. I'm not sure. Maybe they bring him back off the bench. Who knows? But yeah, take your pick on who drops out. Thoughts on Robson? Let me take his men's already playing edge. Yeah, I don't expect he'd lose a lot of minutes there. I still think Robson will be close to an 80-minute guy. That's just kind of always what he's been. But he's priced at 50. Yeah, there's not a lot of upside there for me compared to Grant and Watson around those same prices. Who do you play on the bench? Sandon or Hubner? Sandon. Yeah, I'd probably say Hubner. But again, Hubner's scoring the Dolphins in those few games didn't look very good. You could run either. It's fine. Munro at Bunny's a fun pick. decent try scoring rate, playing beside Campbell Graham. My confidence in the Bunnies attack went down with Latrell, to be honest. I think they'll be very try dependent, and I just don't know how many tries they're going to score. If you think that we're kind of underestimating that attack and he's going to get those tries, then yep, I'm sure there's definite value there. Just him and Tass, to me, yeah, not too keen. Toya or Purdue, yeah. I mean, I think Toya seems to have the better fantasy pedigree from what we know of him. But Purdue looks electric at times as well. So yeah, I don't know. Like I think those ones again, both absolutely fine. I think Toya. I have Toya. I don't have Purdue at the moment. Things can change. Stefano or Watson. Stefano's a funny one. Oh, here's Munro. I did look up Munro. You see how try dependent he is here. 80 minutes on the wing, 19 points, 2 tries for 43, 1 try for 33, 1 try 27. The scoring just isn't great there at all. So yeah, he needs tries, and I'm just not sure how many he'll get. Stefano's always been strange to me. He scores kind of more like an outside back than a forward. His scores are just all over the place in a lot of senses. This last year, 77, 81, but he's also got a 28, 27, 36. You just have games that you don't expect these price of forwards to get. So if you follow the narrative that he's going to go to the Storm and he's going to get minutes and he's going to just clean up these games with the missed tackles and was he going 100? Was he putting in full effort at the Tigers last year? Who knows? So yeah, if you buy into he's going to kick up a gear at the Storm, he could absolutely be a great pick and really kick off that his price rises. If you get a 77 and an 81 and a 50 odd in those first few games, he could work out amazing. It's just again these little games of does he play 40 minutes for 36 and just kill the momentum that he might be getting from the big games. It's hard. So yeah, he was always behind the likes of Horsburgh, etc. For me at that price point. But again, I'm not going to talk anybody out of getting him if you want him. Plus on Tass, yeah, there was the other one. I think I looked it up. I'm not sure if I've still got him open. Yeah, here he was. On the wing, he has 1 game on the wing for 9 points. So take that for what it will. But again, even the rest of his scoring at center and 19, 14, 27, it's yes, he's got the goals. I don't think that's enough. Like Monroe, he'll be very try dependent. Maybe you have him a little level higher because of those goals, because of that slight higher base. But yeah, there's center wing fullback is not great this year. If you've missed out on Tamale and you're looking at these guys, then my plan would basically just be find a way to get Tamale next week without kind of worrying about these guys too much. Play him for 1 game and then switch it if you have to, I suppose. But yeah, not for me. Pick Preston and move to Hosking around 2. So do you mean play Preston 1 week and then switch to Hosking? I wouldn't do that. I think that's sideways and wasting a trade. Hosking, like I love Hosking. I've got him in. I think I talked about him last week when people were saying he'd be a trap, and I was like, no, look, I don't see him as a trap. I think he's a really good fantasy scorer with really big upside, and it doesn't necessarily need 80 minutes to score well, as we saw. But at the same time, he's not going to get 44 tackles with no misses every week. So if you didn't have him, I still think he's a really good buy, but I wouldn't go blowing your team up to try and get him in or anything like that. If there were reasons why you didn't pick him in round one, those reasons still exist now. So up to you. But I think wasting a trade for something that's pretty sideways, yeah, I'm not a fan of it. Pappenhausen or Garrick? I talked about Garrick earlier. I think he's an obvious safer option here. Pappenhausen, I mean, he's fun. Like I love talking about pods. Says he's 10% owned. I don't think that is. There's difference between ownership and ownership in the teams of people who are taking it a bit more seriously. I don't think he'd be anywhere near 10% owned in that category. Um, he's amazing to watch. He's so fun. He can go off for big scores, but he has a 20 and 80 minutes in his game. He has a 28 and 80 minutes in his game. He has a 7 and 80 minutes in his game. Like that's just so hard to live with. If you're mixing in the 80s and the 70 odds with 40s, high 30s is the base, that's fine. But if you're mixing in 20s and 7s, it's really, really hard to kind of recover from that. So yeah. Love the pick. Go for it. I hope it works out if you want to. He's just too risky even for me. I love a pod. I love upside plays. I just can't get behind it at 5:30. Just last question. Campbell Graham, Hopgood, and Mamazelis from Watson, Hamilton. Yeah, look, these are the ones. I mean, they're so different picks. I'm not sure. I mean, Campbell Graham again in that Souths team. I wouldn't start with him until we kind of see how it all fits together. Not convinced. Tino again. I think he's a bit expensive for somebody who's too up and down for those big money forwards. So yeah, out of those ones, if I had to pick three, I'd pick Hopgood, Mamazels, and Watson, but that might not necessarily work in your setup. This was fun. We had a bit of passive aggressive arguing in the comments. So yeah, keep that to yourselves. um, Struggling with centre wing fullback, walking down Marju, Brimson, Yongi, Toya, Nina Sutherland, and fullback. Bird is worrying. Bird to me, I'm not too worried about Bird. Again, he's one like Watson where my opinion hasn't changed too much. Whether he was starting or on the bench, he was probably always going to be like a 50 odd minute guy, maybe up to 60. Now you'd obviously prefer him starting. More things can go right and fewer things can go wrong if he's starting rather than coming off the bench. But at his price, I'm still okay with going with Bird. He's still in my team. The main problem I think with centre wing fullback here, the ones you mentioned, is you don't have Tamale. I think he's kind of a must-have. So yeah, you can go either options of the likes of Purdue, who again are not great, but there's not a lot out there on the cheaper level, or spend up. Get a Garrick who's safer, a Lucas, a Bradman Best, who I have, these types. So yeah, either go cheap, suck it up and get Tamalian, or go more expensive and kind of lock it in for the rest of for the foreseeable future is what I would say. White or Jazz or Bird. We talked about most of these. White, yeah, he probably goes better the first couple of weeks than he would have done with Spencer out. But yeah, I'm still not convinced on him, to be honest. There's a lot of videos where there was a panel video on the kind of cheapy mid-range guys who we talked about White and Kelma and Finifuyaki and those guys. So, those videos are out there if you want some more detail on them. Riley Smith's 230 is a buy we can wait. I think we can wait. If you want to just get on early, assuming that he's going to get himself a bigger minute role at some point, then go for it. stash him away and hope save yourself a trade later on. But to me, he's kind of in the same type of realm as Paddy, where you think he's got a lot of talent and he can score really well. But if he's only going to get 20 minutes off the bench, he's not going to make any money. We can wait until those minutes go up. Twal minutes over 40, minutes over 40 averages 50. He's in my side. Yeah, I looked at Twal as well. He's very similar to kind of Tavanga in many ways, where we can look at over 40 minutes. So that was just 2024. Look at his career. Yep, 50 average. Even just last year, 47 average, still pretty good. But the problem is he just doesn't play over 40 minutes all the time. Like his average on 2024 was 39, which is where he's priced at. Because while he scored big when he played over 40 minutes, he just has a lot of games where he doesn't. And these aren't injury games, they're just games where he plays 35 minutes and scores 28 of 25 minutes. They're just in there and they're going to drag it down. So if you think he's locked in to play these 40 plus, 50 plus minute games, then yeah, I can totally see value there. But history shows that he's going to have these games mixed in where he just doesn't. And that's why he's kept around this price point the whole time. Plus on Jake Tungo, just in general, somebody's perspective. So I don't know, from what I've seen of him, he's that borderline in baseball parlance. He's the quadruple A type player where does well in the lower leagues, but then coming up to the majors, maybe doesn't quite have it. Somebody brought him up in the I don't think I still have his stats open here. No, I don't. Brought him up in the private group and looked at his stats. He had a run of 3 games last year, 70 plus minutes, had a line break try in each, and the scores were 22, 21, and 19. So, yeah, not a lot to work on from a fantasy perspective. Bird, Intertrades guy. Yes, we spoke about Bird. I still think starting or on the bench, I don't think has a great impact on the minutes. I'll try and just run through these a bit quicker, as I think I have been going on for quite a while. Takiyaho is interesting. See his stats and just think he's a must-have. So the thing to remember about Takiyaho when you look at his stats is these were 2.5 years ago. He's had a couple of years away from the NRL. He went over to the Super League. I tried to find his stats over there. I think he only played 10 games in the Super League in those 2.5 years as well. So he hasn't had a lot of game time. So I think that's why people kind of gloss over him a bit. He's just not. We just don't know what player he is anymore, I guess. If he's this guy from 2022 who plays 51 minutes and averages 48 and he's priced at 30, golden, right? Absolutely golden. Is that the player we're going to get? I'm not convinced, but if you think it is, go for it, right? Let's see here. Shibasaki added, yeah. Hopgood or Grant. Again, look, they're both guns. Either or is fine. Luai. Yeah, Luai, I'd always compared him to Munster being at the same price and always had Munster ahead of him. But I think he'll go well. I think him and Galvin will be a good combination. I think the Tigers will be much improved, certainly on the attacking side. So yeah, they could go well. But yeah, there's so many halves that Luai kind of never really came into my reckoning. Hopgood or Gus Crichton, both guns, both good. All of these guys are good. Kilmer or White, go those videos we did the panel comparison, Kelma, White, and Finifuyaki. Things have changed a little bit now. Maybe you don't like Kelma as much because of no Moses. You like White a bit more because of no Lenu. But again, it's up to you. Gauze. If Gauze plays 50 minutes, don't you see value? If he knows he won't play, he won't his work rate increase. Well, you might have thought so. But again, if we look at some of these stats, there's Takiyaho, sorry. Last one I had open. Have you considered therapy? Very apt. So let's just look second row and look for games where he's played big minutes, not necessarily 80. So 65 minutes, 22 points. 16 tackles in 65 minutes. That's not upping your work rate. 21 and 52 minutes, 19 and 45 minutes, 28 and 61 minutes. He's just not a fantasy producer. Like, isn't it not criticism on him as a player, but as a fantasy producer, he's just not. Here's 80-minute games with a try, 34-42. It's just, it's hard. I mean, 250K, like, is there value there? Sure. Some, probably. But he's going to be such a hard watch. He's not going to be somebody that you want to play. Yeah, I'd stay off it. Um, Given that was the last one I looked up on Footy Stats, that is probably the last of these questions. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think that's probably long enough. Haven't quite. Okay, I'll give a very, very quick look at my team. Won't go into any detail at all, really. It's not that much different to everyone else. I've got Grant over Watson. I have Bird still. My one pod, which I'm sticking with, is Bradman Best. I think Newcastle have such a good start. I think he has real boom potential. I do get why people would be a bit put off by the Newcastle's buy in round 4 means you can't really have more than 2 Newcastle guys, and spending up to Lucas, spending up to Ponga, completely understand that. I've been on Best since very early in the preseason. Longy over the casual athlete built him up as well, which made me, kind of lock in and think that, well, at least I'm not crazy. I haven't seen a single other team in any circuit, floating around that has Best in it. So I'm assuming I'm the only person in the whole game, regardless of what the stats tell me. And when he gets 100 in the first week, I'll be laughing, and will be number one in the whole comp. Fingers crossed. Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody. Like I said at the beginning, feel free to throw some comments in. Let me know what you think works, doesn't work about this format. This is my second solo video doing these, so I completely appreciate there's probably a ton to improve on these. So definitely open to some advice about what you want to see and how you want me to approach it. So cool. Thanks for that, and good luck everybody this week.